You mentioned you're one of the oldest ones on all the mats. So what were the keys to your longevity in BJJ? How have you stayed with it? Because jiu-jitsu is a sport where you see people come and you see a lot of people go, especially if when they get older.
Tap early, tap often.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let your ego get in the way. I don't care if it's the whitest white belt. I'm going to tap that guy the second I start to feel the joint trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, don't fight out of submissions. That's where most injuries happen. If you're caught in an arm lock or an Americana, you already made the mistake. Fighting out of it is not necessarily a skill, you know. It just means the guy doesn't know how to put it on. Believe me, if I was in the same position with Hoist or Hickson, you know, or somebody, I'd be tapping. Because so I figure if some blue belt catches me in an arm lock, good for him. I made a mistake. I left it go too far. I'm going to acknowledge my mistake and tap, trying to fight out of it because I don't want to tap to a lower belt. That's huge ego, man. Get rid of that. Get rid of the ego and realize that size and strength matter. Size, strength, and youth overcome a lot of technique. So for an old black belt like me, a strong blue belt who's like 30 years, 40 years younger than me, that's almost like fighting a black belt. Maybe not technique, but every other attribute. You know, the Gracies came up with the Boyd belt system based on one of their instructors who was very upset that he got tapped by a blue belt. The guy was like 52-year-old black belt, got tapped by a blue belt. And when they analyzed it, you know, the blue belt that caught him was like 30 years younger, like 20 pounds heavier. Of course, if you make even a little mistake, or even if you don't make a mistake, the guy's athleticism might be enough just to get you anyway. So for every 10 years and every 20 pounds, it's like the guy has a belt. So if you go into class tomorrow, what's your rank right now?
I'm a brown belt.
Okay, so if you go into class tomorrow and there's a guy, and how old are you?
37.
Okay, so let's say there's a 20-year-old, 17 years younger, right? And maybe 20 pounds heavier. That and he's wearing a blue belt. That's like you're fighting a black belt, man. You give a belt for every 20 pounds and every 10 years. The guy would be like, you know, blue, purple, brown, black.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind, you know, like when you're training, and not to let your ego get in the way.
Yeah. Know? Tap early, tap often.
Yeah. Well, you're a brown belt now, so you probably have a little bit more power in selecting your partners. Pick the guys you know that are gentle and use the technique. Don't go with power dudes or crazy guys.
That's what I was going to ask you. So, like, how do you deal with those herky jerky like spazzes? You just say, like, I'm just not going to go with you. There's just no benefit on me going with a spaz.
I refuse. I say, I'm going to sit this one out.
Yeah.
You know, like, for example, I went to Maui Jiu-Jitsu. It's run by Hickson's first black belt, Limon. Luis Heredia. Awesome guy. One of the best guys in the world. Actually, he's really fun to spar with because, you know, even though he's a lot younger than me, he's still up there and he understands. So he was great for sparring. And some of the guys would get it. I wasn't looking for guys just to roll over, you know, but, you know, some of the guys were very, you know, they showed a lot of deference to my age and they would play a nice strategic game. You know, now and again, they would, you know, put one on the old man, but they'd do it in a really slick, technical way without using a lot of power. But then there were some guys, even some black belts, that just couldn't not use power. As soon as you'd start to counter them and to match them skill-wise, they would start to up the ante and they would go into their athleticism and their power.
Yeah.
Their egos didn't like the fact that this old guy was hanging with them.
Yeah.
And I quickly learned to avoid them.
Okay. So that's the advice for dealing with those, is just not pass. I just do not need to go with you.
Yeah. But, you know, if you're not the head instructor, you may not have a choice. you know, because
Yeah.
the blue belts, you know, let's say older blue belts starting out there that waited till they're in their 40s, 50s, whatever, 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
You kind of at the mercy of the teacher, but you should definitely talk to your instructor and have a talk with them. Say, look, I'm in this for fun and health and recreation. I'm not in it for medals or competitions. I just want to have fun. I don't want to get hurt. So please, you know, help me select my my training partners.
Yeah.
Pair me up with guys you know won't destroy me.
Yeah. And in particular, leg locks. Leg locks, I was saying, are becoming more and more popular. And maybe it was Sean Roberts was the guy Zach fought in Metamorphosis. I don't know if that was the one you're talking about.
No, it wasn't Sean Roberts. It was Gary Tonin.
Oh, Gary Tonin. Okay. So how do you train leg lock safely? Because that's something that worries me. Like, I don't want to get my ankle wrenched or my knee wrenched. How do you train leg lock safely in the jiu-jitsu world today, where more and more people are chasing after leg submissions, because that's kind of like the thing right now?
I train them when I like them, and I'm not actually that bad at it, you know. For old guys like me, sometimes it's easier to go for ankle and foot locks than it is to pass the guard. that used to be one of the reasons why a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys didn't like those things, because they said it makes you lazy in passing the guard. But for me, I'll say to my partner, look, let's train them, but if you get me in it, consider me tapped.
Yeah.
If you get me in it, I acknowledge I screwed up. And I'll just tap.
So it comes back to picking.
I'm not going to let some 20-year-old get a heel hook and then try to roll and twist and, you know, unwrap it. Forget that. Now, I will practice the defenses slow-mo just because I want to know them. But in truth, if I'm rolling with someone and I let them get to my legs, I figure I screwed up.
Yeah.
You know.
What?
So, okay, you got me. Good job. You know, a straight footlock, I'll fight that.
Yeah.
I have very flexible ankles and feet, and I can get out of if a heel hook, I won't even bother. I'll tap immediately. A straight leg lock, I'll usually tap immediately. It depends on the angle, but usually I have an agreement. Look, let's see if we can get each other in the leg lock, but I'm not going. Just consider me tapped.
Yeah, avoid if you got in that place that something went wrong, and try to figure out what got you caught in that ankle lock or that leg lock. And again, selecting smart partners. And thankfully, I have some great partners to roll with. My brother being one of them, who's like a high level black belt, and which is where I want to be. So as a brown belt myself right now, what would you say? What should I focus on to get to that next level as a brown belt? How do you get to that next level?
Well, are you talking about competition? Are you talking about self-defense? Are you talking about the tournament game? You know, like
self-defense and just knowledge and the martial arts spirit are my priorities.
Buy Grandmaster Elliot Gracie's book and learn every single thing in there.
Helio Gracie?
Yeah, Master Text of Jiu-Jitsu.
Master Text of Jiu-Jitsu.
And master every single one of those.
Okay.
And then go down to the Gracie Academy and take a couple classes with Henner and Hiron. Or even enroll in the combatives program.
Yeah, they have
learn how to defend yourself in the street.
They have an online program. What do you think about learning jiu-jitsu online in this new world?
I used to have a very poor opinion of it until I went to Tahiti. And I met a guy by the name of Joel. And Joel was a prison guard at the local prison. And he had been training on videotape from the Gracie Academy for 3 years. And he had a little group of guys as they trained with. And what do they call those? Foray. A foray. It's like a thatched structure with open walls. And they put mats inside it. It was so cool, man. It was so Tahitian. And the ocean was right there, you know. And, I just happened to be crossing a ferry from Tahiti to Morea, and I happened to see this guy with a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu t-shirt, and I immediately struck up a conversation with him. And his English was just so it was a little trouble communicating, but his girlfriend spoke good English. So when she came, we had a good talk. So he was really excited to hear that I was a black belt. So I went on over there to his place, and like 15 guys showed up. These huge Tahitian guys, man. And I was a lot younger then, so I could still handle myself pretty good. Thank God. And with the jiu-jitsu I knew, I could hang with the big dogs. Couldn't do it now, but you have to understand this was like, oh my God, 15, 16 years ago. And I could still hang with the guys. And I was so impressed with this guy's ability. I couldn't believe it. And he never had a teacher. He just self-trained from videos. And they just would drill him and practice. I gave him a blue belt on the spot. He was certainly no white belt. And shockingly, even though he weighed 220 to my 160 pounds, he was amazingly light and gentle. Very much so. Very technical. A lot of fun. That's great. Train. Yeah, fun to train with. Fun. Some of the guys were real muscle heads, but I was back in those days, I was still able to handle some of those guys. Not so much now.
So for all the jiu-jitsu practitioners out there listening, how to be a good jiu-jitsu training partner? How do you be a good jiu-jitsu training partner, Steve?
Be very sensitive to your partner. When you put a submission on, don't rip it. The second he taps, let it go. You can even ask him, hey, you okay? You okay? I asked several times. I'll go for the tap just to make sure I'm applying it right. But I'll verbally ask the person for a verbal submission before I put it on. And, I'm just very careful with the way I train. I don't train, I don't do, painful things like digging my elbows into someone's side to split their guard or, I try to move in a deliberate manner in a way that is not herky, jerky, spazzy. I don't use speed, I use smoothness. Like Hickson used to say, smooth is fast.
Yeah, absolutely. In jiu-jitsu and in weight training.
And get my timing down. To be a good partner, be clean. Make sure you wash your gi. Don't show up with stinky apparel. There's nothing I hate worse than someone that reeks and stinks. Brush your teeth, for goodness sake. Don't have foul breath. A lot of guys have no idea how much their breath stinks, man. No, they just don't know. So, be hygienic. Wash your gi regularly. Clean your clothes regularly. I know a lot of young guys, they live by themselves. They don't have wives and girlfriends to do all that stuff for them. And they show up to school with a stinky gi. At the Gracie Academy, you'd be sent home, man. No way. Of course, they have gis there that people can rent. So that's kind of nice. And the other thing is, don't always think about winning. Think about perfecting your techniques and your skills. You don't have to win. If you're better than the guy in the bottom, put yourself on the bottom. Work your weak positions. Like start from the back with the hooks in. Start from the back with the part, have a choke in. Start from the mount. Start cross side, with the guy on top of you. Practice your defensive skills. And that's a good thing for old guys anyway. It gets to the point where you're on the bottom anyway. So I just lay down for a lot of my white and blue belts, and they're like puppies. Just and I just Elliot Gracie was a great example of that kind of training. Even in his 90s, he was still playing that game. I'm just laying down, playing defense.
You've had the real honor to train with a lot of high-level quality coaches. What makes a good coach? When someone's looking to train with someone, what should they look for in their coach?
Well, someone that's kind and someone that's really looking out for their best interest. Not just in it for the money, or not a coach that just only caters to the best guys in the room. A lot of times coaches get frustrated with beginners that aren't very talented or maybe not so coordinated. And they spend all their time addressing like the best dudes in the room and just kind of neglect people that are just starting out.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
a good teacher should be able to get even the worst, most uncoordinated person able to do the techniques and the moves at some point.
Mhm, mhm.
It's really important. I think it's also important to keep like white belt classes separate from the more advanced classes.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
do. I think the white belts need their own basic class. However,
Mhm.
I would encourage any rank to occasionally go to a basic class just to
Yeah.
go back there and just get it down. I
Mhm.
think takedowns and throws are really important and totally neglected. Being a college wrestler, I always love takedowns. And I think it's important to know all of the basic Japanese judo throws and your classic wrestling takedowns. And
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think you learn that. I think it's really important to practice and teach your students how to defend against a club,
Yep.
a baseball bat, pistols, knives. I'm a little leery of the knife defenses. I haven't seen a knife defense from any martial art I really trust, you know, uh, just so easy to get in trouble with a knife. I
Oh
do
yeah.
practice the classic defenses, but I can't say I'd have real confidence in it.
Mhm, mhm.
And,
So
I don't, if I couldn't run or escape or get like a longer handled weapon,
yeah,
then and only then would I ever confront a guy with a knife.
yeah, yeah.
The pistol,
So
pistol is fairly easy to take. But see, people don't know this stuff. And a good coach teaches the whole curriculum.
self-defense is key in your training. Jiu-jitsu self-defense is you're really big on that,
Yeah.
and that
Well, the
should be
Gracie's were. Yeah. I mean, that's what jiu-jitsu was for. Now, listen, I do respect guys that only want to learn the sport. They don't
Mhm,
care about it. They just like to play the game of jiu-jitsu, like a chess match.
mhm,
That's fine. But I think everyone owes it to themselves to at least have a rudimentary knowledge of the self-defense.
mhm.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And once one has mastered all the base levels and are now a black belt, what should be the focus of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt? I'd said that is the beginning of the journey.
Well, it is like the beginning because now you got to perfect all these techniques you worked so long for.
Hmm.
And you can get really rusty. For
Hmm.
example, I kind of embarrassed myself today. I had a young couple over today. I hadn't practiced stick defense in a long time.
Yeah.
Man, I felt really on my left foot. I was so rusty, really
Hmm.
rusty. And it
Hmm.
was like, dang, man, I need to get the sticks out and practice fending off a stick. You know,
Yeah. And I
the one
see you.
girl, the one girl I was teaching was kind of spastic, and
Mhm.
she poked me pretty hard right in the stomach. Little
Yeah.
there. Here I am, the
Yeah.
black belt teacher, and she gave me a pretty good shot with that stick. And my timing was just off, my precision was off. And
Hmm.
she was kind of herky jerky, but it just goes to show you, you can never stop practicing. Use it
Hmm.
or lose it. So
Yeah.
you better believe
And
I'm gonna bone up on some of those defenses that I've neglected for a while.
mhm.